Hi everyone, this is Heather Lattinen from the Flourish Academy. This is episode 549, and today we are talking about Wacom tablets. But first, make sure you subscribe to our channel, like the video, share with your photographer friends, and check out the Flourish Academy podcast. We recently released these new episodes that we're calling Flourish in 5, and they're released every Friday morning, so definitely check those out. Okay, I got a new Wacom tablet recently, because my Intuos 4 medium broke. Sadly, it just stopped working at some point last year, and yes, I had updated the drivers, everything was up to date. It was very, very old. I had had it, since the Intuos 4 was released, which was many years ago, and I loved that tablet. It was a medium, so it was pretty big. So when I ordered this one and it came in the mail, I was like, oh, wow, okay, look at that cute little baby Wacom tablet. This is less than half the size of the big one. It seemed so tiny to me, but I do like to experiment with different sizes and talk about the reasons why that matters, because Wacom tablets, unlike your mouse, are mapped to the monitor in an absolute fashion. And what that means is that on the top left, if you click here on the top left of a Wacom tablet, you will be clicking on the top left of your monitor. Same with the top right and anywhere in between. And that's called absolute mapping. In relative mapping, which is what you're used to with a mouse, if you pick up your mouse off of your mouse pad and move it and you set it back down on your mouse pad, your cursor will not move. It will be in the same place, and that's called relative mapping. So you're used to relative mapping. Wacom uses absolute mapping, which I actually prefer, but it does take some getting used to. So I have a video, this is kind of funny. It's one of the oldest videos I have on my YouTube channel, so it is from many, many years ago, and it happens to be the most viewed video on the channel, and it's all about absolute versus relative mapping and getting used to your Wacom tablet. On that video, I provide exercise files to help you practice with the absolute mapping so that you can get the hang of it. Because one of two things happens. This is what I hear photographers say. They either say, oh, I don't know if I want to spend the money on a Wacom tablet because I don't know if I would like it. I don't know if I would use it. And then some people will buy them and they won't like them, and they'll try it for maybe a day or two, and they'll say, I can't get used to this, and they'll put it off to the side, and they won't use it, and they're very disappointed. It absolutely takes practice to get used to absolute mapping when you have been using relative mapping with your mouse your entire life. But I promise you, it is worth it, and there are numerous reasons why I think every photographer should have a Wacom tablet. Now let me say this. The Wacom Intuos 4 medium that I had, and it might be under a slightly different name, it's still called the Intuos. I believe it runs $350. Okay, not completely inexpensive, especially if you're like, I'm not sure if I'm even going to like it. I can understand your hesitation. But this size, this starts at $79. It's $79 if you get it wired. If you get it with Bluetooth, which I did, so it has a charger, it's $99. And I think at that price point, honestly, you should give it a shot. If you believe that you're going to love it and you do a ton of editing, then yeah, I might jump straight to the Intuos. The difference, there's two differences between this one and the bigger tablets. Besides the size, of course, is the number of express keys that you have that you can program. So up here, you see these keys. Yes, there they are. You can program these to do different things in different applications. Now, a lot of people don't know this. They assume that if they program these keys, like, for instance, if you program this key to be your right click or maybe your right arrow, that you have to use that same key in all applications, and that's not true. I program this differently for Photoshop than I do Lightroom because I have different keystrokes that I use, and I also program it differently for when I use Google Chrome, so when I'm surfing on the internet. I have these keys mapped differently, and it depends on the application, and it depends on what you use on a regular basis. With the Intuos 4, besides having more express keys, they also have this circular, I used it for making my brushes bigger, smaller, having a softer edge or a harder edge, where you could just swipe and you could change things. You can also fully programmable. When I had my Intuos 4, you guys, I tricked it out. I had literally every express key programmed, different for Photoshop and Lightroom, and I don't know what that thing is called in the center, where you can just swipe around it, and then it also has a key in the middle that you can press, or at least mine did. So I would program those for all different things. So when I got this, I knew I was going to be limited. Obviously, I don't have as many express keys. But the truth is, okay, question, thank you. Heather, why did you get that tiny little Wacom tablet? Why didn't you just get the bigger one again? Yes, I loved the bigger one, but I just don't see the need for it anymore because I'm not editing 30 weddings a year. When I was high volume, there is just no replacement for that Intuos 4. I loved it. I'll come back to an example of how I use the express keys. But if you're not editing a ton, and or you're not sure if you're going to like it, I would obviously recommend starting with the less expensive model just to test it out. You'll still get a feel for what it's like to use a stylus. They have different nibs. There are different nibs inside of this stylus. And in the Intuos 4, I did not use the nib that came with it. I used a different one because I liked it better. It has just a different feel to it. I would also program Photoshop with different sensitivities to this so I could use it like an airbrush, which means however hard I pressed on the tablet, it would put on more of that change. So I use it almost like an opacity, but rather than have to change my opacity, I could just use the pressure sensitivity. You obviously, if you're using Photoshop with a mouse, you do not have an option for pressure sensitivity, but with a stylus you do, and that's a huge advantage. Okay, but that's fun, but that's not even the reason. Hi Laura, happy Friday. Hey, Christina, it's good to see you. I just saw these come up. Okay, thank you. Okay, oh, and then they disappeared. I'm sorry. All right, but that's not even the biggest advantage. The reason I first got into using a Wacom tablet was very early on in my career. I mean, very early on, maybe my second or third season as a wedding photographer. I developed this pain in my wrist and my arm, my right one. I mean, pain. Went to a doctor and he's like, oh yes, you have carpal tunnel, or you're on your way to carpal tunnel. And he says, what do you do for a living? And I said, I photograph weddings. My camera's really heavy. And then I edit in front of my computer all week. And he's like, yeah, you should probably stop using a mouse because your hand gets like this. You know, it's like gets in this form and it's gonna stay there. And I'm like, oh, stop using a mouse? Do you not hear me just say I edit weddings like all day, every day? That's what I do. My hand is like constantly in this position. He said, well, yeah, it's just gonna get worse until you stop. And I was actually devastated by this. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I mean, I had just left my corporate job. Weddings, that was my job. That was my new career. That's what I'm going to do. So instantly I started wearing a brace to help with that. I mean, it was pretty severe pain, and I didn't want to go down this route of surgery or anything like that. I thought I have to find different ways to manage this. So I immediately bought a Wacom tablet. So I've had several since this first one because this was back in the day, and I immediately loved it. And within a couple of months of me using this, and I was wearing my brace, I healed, it got better. And do you know, since that was, almost 17 years ago, I've not had any problems with my wrist or my hand or any kind of pain, because this is a much more natural movement than using a mouse. If you do any editing at all, I think you should have a Wacom tablet. If you do a ton of editing and you're really busy, high volume, I would absolutely recommend the Intuos line. I always had the medium. The medium's pretty big. I think they also make a small and maybe even a large. I would definitely not recommend the large. Why? Good question. Thank you. Do you remember a moment ago I said that this is mapped in an absolute fashion to your monitor? If I click in the top left, that's where I'm going to be in my monitor. I have a 27-inch iMac. If I click over here, I'm going to be in the top right of my monitor. The larger your tablet, the larger your movements between things on the screen. You dig what I'm saying? So if you have this giant tablet and you're up in maybe the file menu in Photoshop, you're way up here, and then you need to go down to the bottom of your layers palette to add a layer mask, and you're not using a keyboard shortcut, which you should be, then you're going way down here. So you have these big sweeping movements. So the size of the tablet being larger, that was not advantageous to me. I actually prefer the smaller tablet due to the absolute mapping, and then my movements are shorter. They're not as widespread, and I believe you are literally going to think I'm crazy. I believe I'm faster as a result. I think that those big sweeping movements across that tablet cost you time measured in seconds. And when you're editing 30 weddings a year, those seconds add up to minutes and ultimately hours. And the next thing you know, you're dead in front of your computer months later because your tablet was too big. I prefer the smaller tablet from the position of absolute versus relative mapping. But I prefer the larger tablet because it has more express keys and it has the round toggle, has the round thing in the middle of the express keys so that you can swipe and do different things. That, I wish they made a tablet. I mean, okay, listen, where are you going to put the keys? I get it. There are constraints. There are physical constraints where I could have all of those express keys over here. Because this, I don't mind this size at all. So I don't miss the physical size of my Intuos Medium. I just miss the express keys and it had a display. Mine had a display. So not only could I program the express keys, but I could give them a name. So I wasn't like this, I have to remember, oh, I'm in Photoshop. That's right. I programmed this to soften skin. Or, oh, I'm in Lightroom and I programmed this as the spot removal tool. So I have to, I could make stickers. That's a good idea. I could label this. But on my Intuos 4, it had a screen, and so I could see, and I named it. So I would say like soften skin, spot removal tool. I could see all of that on my screen. I talk about what I did in that previous video that I mentioned. It's really embarrassing. That video is very, very old, but the point is still the same. And listen, I was new to YouTube at the time and filming. I actually filmed it here, but the angle's all kinds of crazy. The lighting is terrible. It doesn't matter. I talk about absolute versus relative mapping, but most importantly, I give you exercise files so that you can practice with this. It looks like these elementary drawings and you have to like literally connect the dots. And it may seem silly to you, but if you do that enough, you'll start to get used to that mapping. That is the number one thing that bothers people and that causes photographers to say, no, I don't want to use this because I'm not used to absolute mapping. You're used to relative because you've been using a mouse. So I would say, let me look. I saw you guys. Yeah, right. Okay, I see that, Greg. Oh yeah, okay. If your hand is hurting, then you definitely want a Wacom tablet. I will post links below to this one as well as the bigger one that I had. But again, if you are not sure if this is for you and you're concerned as to whether you will use it or like it, I recommend starting with one of the inexpensive models, $79 or $99, and testing it to see what you think. And that model might suffice for you. You might use that forever and be perfectly fine. I wouldn't recommend that somebody who is new to a tablet jumps right in to the Intuos 4 Medium with the giant express keys because it's going to feel overwhelmed. Hey, listen, I did. Maybe you're a go-getter and you just know that you're going to love it, or you know that you're going to make yourself love it. So you get the bigger model and you figure it out, that's fine. If you do get one, and especially if you're in the Flourish Academy membership, make sure you tag me and I can help you set it up. I was actually thinking about doing a bonus video inside of Elevate recently because we were talking about Wacom tablets. Oh, and so I wanted to tell you this, that's right, I forgot. I have this script that I use in Photoshop. Okay, when I edit, let me give a more realistic example. When I edit a boudoir session is going to be, I do everything I can inside of Lightroom and I produce what I call the perfect digital negative. That means color corrected, exposure corrected, cropped, anything major that I could get rid of in Lightroom, I do. But all of my boudoir images ultimately end up going through Photoshop for a little bit of skin softening or retouching when necessary. Okay, but think about this. They get exported out of Lightroom because that's my workflow preference. I have a video on that. I don't use the edit in feature. It explodes the file size. I export a JPEG and then I open those JPEGs inside of Photoshop to work on them. Well, so imagine this. You have a folder of, I don't know, 20 or 30 images, or, okay, how about a wedding? 700. You have to open the first image, work on it, flatten it, save it, close it, and then open the next image. And that takes a lot of time. And when I recognized that, I asked myself, is there a way to automate this? And the answer is yes. And I have this script that I use that does the following. I set it up on, like, when I'm starting a session, I just go into my preferences, I set it up, and I say, hey, here's the folder I'm working on. I tell Photoshop this. I then programmed my stylus. It has 2 buttons. I programmed this button on my stylus to do the following. It opens an image, and then I do my work, right? Whatever that image requires. Some images require a lot of touch-up, some require none. When I am finished working on that image, I just press the bottom button on my stylus, and I have programmed it to, listen to this, to flatten, save as a JPEG 10, close the image, and open the next one in the folder. What? For real. And so what I do is I just sit there and I click this button. I click it, image opens, do my stuff, click it, image, flatten, save, close, opens the next one, work, click. I timed myself one time. I took 700 images through Photoshop, some of which required heavy retouching, some required none. Think like the reception, the ceremony, they didn't require any retouching. But I took 700 images through Photoshop in 2 hours, 2 hours using this method because I programmed this with a script. I love tech. I love automation. I love actions. I love droplets. And I programmed every inch of that Wacom tablet to do the things I wanted it to do. Now, this script that I'm talking about, I would open images. I could also set the script to run an action, either when the photo was opened or when closing the photo. So, for instance, when I was doing a boudoir session, I would program this button to open a photo, run my retouch action, and then I apply it wherever I want, and then I press it and it does the next. But when it opens the photo, it automatically runs the action. Back in the day when I was using a Canon 20D, it had a pretty significant digital haze on it. I wanted to remove that from every image. So what I had Photoshop do was run what I called a dehaze action. It was just a really low level sharpening on every photo, and I did it upon closing the image. But I programmed that all into the script, and all I had to do was click the button on the stylus. Isn't that magical? And people say, oh, you went to school for engineering. What a waste of a degree. Really? Okay, because I love this stuff. So I programmed it, and every year what I would do was I tracked all my workflow throughout the year on a spreadsheet, and at the end of the year, I would look at my delivery times and my editing, every single step, every detail, and I would ask myself, where's the bottleneck? I would find a bottleneck and I would fix it. And then ultimately the bottleneck just moves to another area and I would fix it. And the year that I instituted this script into my stylus was life-changing. Okay, I did not create the script. My friend Mike did, and he actually, I have to look because this was a while ago. I should say this about my friend Mike. I met him years ago in an online forum called DWF, Digital Wedding Forum. He's from Canada. He is one of the smartest guys I know. And he developed this script and he let me test it. And then he started selling it, and I have a coupon code. He had given me a coupon code for the Flourish Academy. Let me check in on that, and I'll post it all in the information below. But I have been using this script since Photoshop version CS2, no, maybe even before that, Photoshop version 7. And that script has never failed me, not one single time. Hallelujah to Mike. So I will give you the link for that, and I'll see if I still have that. It was very inexpensive. Listen, here's the thing. What is it worth to you to automate like that? To me, it was worth everything. You install this script, and then every time you have a session, you just have to tell the script or Photoshop, hey, here's the folder I'm using, and when I'm done, here's what I want you to do with the images. It was pretty intuitive, and I loved it. But what I did was, Mike gave me the script to test. I took it one step further, and I programmed a keyboard shortcut to automate kicking off the script. And then I took that, it was Command-Shift-A. That's what I remember, Command-Shift-A. I programmed that in. And then I took Command-Shift-A and programmed it into my stylus right here. This click was Command-Shift-A. And I picked that because it was random and nothing else was assigned to it. So all I'd have to do is set up that script and click, click, click away, and my images were done. I would love to maybe do a bonus training on setting up your Wacom. I mean, it is for sure happening inside of Elevate. That's what they pay for. and maybe even the membership, but I'll keep you guys aware of that and let you know. In the meantime, I'll post the links for the tablets below and let me know your thoughts. Do you have one? Do you love it? Would you recommend it? How long did it take you to get used to the absolute mapping versus relative? Or did you even know that was a thing? Because I don't know that that's talked about, and I think people get their Wacom out and they don't recognize that, and they're very, very confused. So Greg is here. He says he has one and he's never used it. May I ask why? Was it the mapping? Did it just confuse you? Plug it in and use it. This will save your wrist, but it's also much more natural in terms of editing. Like, it's easier to brush on things like skin softening, or if you are adding eyelashes, anything where you need sweeping motions. This is, to me, to be honest, picking up a mouse I use a mouse. You can see it. It's right there. Picking up a mouse to use it in Photoshop, however, to me feels like a brick. Like, I just cannot do it. This is just more natural movements. Oh, Sarah's looking at getting one this week. So I'll post the links. Please use those links. They're affiliate links, and they really, really help. I appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video.